We joined Producers Club after being flat in revenue for 5 years. We were stuck right around the $750,000 mark. And what I realized is that I was the bottleneck. I was the problem. Too often, we're in the trenches doing the things. I love getting away from the business at least once a quarter to get the clear headspace to think about the business critically. It's just dedicated time to think about what you're doing in your business. It doesn't make sense.
Hey, welcome to the My First Million podcast, Stuart.
Thanks, Rob. Glad to be here.
So let's dive in here. Can you just take us back? People love when you take us back to the beginning, kind of what motivated you to start your IT services business, and what were your initial goals?
So what got me into business was the fact that I appreciated the fact you could write your own ticket. And if you hustled, you're smart about it, you had the opportunity to have an unlimited upside in most cases. And so that was what got me interested in business. And then as far as going into business with my dad and I had talked about going into business for years. We actually tried to purchase a business back in 2002. And in a twist of fate, somebody who actually missed the deadline for making a payment, suddenly got the payment wired in, and we didn't end up with that business. And so that's why I don't manufacture three-wheel vintage cars anymore, or ever. So, but what got me started with IT is I was actually working for an IT provider, a large one, at one point had 150 staff members, and they were doing corporate IT support. And they lost that account. They were very much far too heavily weighted on the revenue side for that big whale account. And when they lost that account, the owner basically decided he didn't really want to keep the grind anymore and try to rebuild the company back. And so he decided he was going to fold it. And I approached him and said, "What are we doing with our clients?" And he said, "Not really my problem. We're just going out of business." And I said, "Well, I've got a non-compete," which he'd proven he was willing to enforce in the past with other staff members. And I said, "Will you ignore my non-compete and let me go after my own accounts?" And he said, "Sure." So I went to the lady who was in our AR department. I asked a very important question. I said, "Who pays their bills early and on time?" And because I knew I wasn't a bank. And so she gave me a list, brought the list to him. He got out a red pen, crossed off who I wasn't allowed to approach. And then that was it. I had a list of companies that I could go after. I had a conversation with my dad and said, "Hey, it's not any of the couple businesses we talked about starting. One was a motorcycle dealership back in 2000. Another one was a, like I said, that three-wheel vintage car company." And I said, "Hey, would you be interested in starting an IT business with me?" And he said, "Sure, I'd be happy to support you in that." And we talked about it, and we talked about what would be our goal? What would we use our revenue for? Like, what was the real thing with it? And we decided that if we did it together, we would try to launch a business that was aimed at providing kind of that corporate level IT support for our clients, and at the same time using a percentage of our profits to support missions and philanthropic work around the world to try to kind of help out those who had less. And so that was it. That's how we started it. And
wow,
go ahead.
That's really interesting. So how has that part worked out, the philanthropic part? I mean, is it that doesn't usually come up in these conversations. I'd love to hear more about that.
To be frank with you, in the first few years, obviously you're kind of scrapping and trying to survive. Mm-hmm. But as soon as we had a little bit of money and opportunity, we were able to sponsor a kid, an 18-year-old in Egypt, kind of go through hotel management school because tourism is a big industry there. And at the time I had a bunch of friends who worked in Egypt, and I'd gone there on a trip to help build an apartment for kids transitioning out of an orphanage with a group of friends. And so we did that. We were able to donate some time and some money. But to be frank with you, the biggest problem was the fact that we got really distracted with the running of the business and the doing of the things. And it wasn't until I bought my dad out in 2016 that I really, and I considered selling the business actually at that time instead of buying him out, because it would have been pretty lucrative to do so, and it would have given him instant money for his retirement. But I kind of asked myself, why did I start this thing? And, what was it we really cared about? And I thought, what, we started it with a mission. We haven't really been focused or true to that mission. And I felt like I felt like it was a worthy cause and a worthy mission, and that we needed to do what we could to help go along with that. And we've been supporting local nonprofits, but at the same time, it was less of a planned thing and more of a, when we could, we would support nonprofits, and we try to do something every year. But again, it was less of a planned occurrence and more of a opportunistic thing. And so from 2016 till now, I've tried to be far more intentional in how we've done things. And my intention is only to continue to accelerate that.
That's fantastic. I'm also curious, as you're building this business, did you have a defining moment that you feel like that really set you on the path to success? Honestly,
the defining moment, there were a number of them. One was basically meeting Gary Pica at a meeting that Kaseya hosted up in Boston. And I thought, oh my gosh, somebody else understands what I'm talking about, And he'd been doing that stuff for, at that point, years.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, at MSP, like literally Ross Perot, he was the guy who basically invented IT managed services with Perot systems. But and that was in the 70s. So, but meeting Gary was a defining moment that kind of helped me realize there was a framework I could follow. But believe it or not, it was a client who was kind of like, basically kind of acted like the muse. She was willing to ask the questions. She would tell me like, hey, buy me lunch and let's talk. And so we'd go out to lunch. And over lunch, she would tell me the things that she was looking for. And to be frank with you, that was probably the best help I had, because it helped me from a client perspective understand really what her needs were as a business and what she was looking for. And that was honestly, like, for example, we went from basically almost fully variable managed services, where it was just a monitoring fee and then everything else was billed time and material, to full fixed fee, where the only thing we excluded was projects and hardware. And so that was the thing that she brought to my attention. And so we were really early to market on that in our area. And it was her conversation with me that really spurred me to ask the questions of myself, whether or not we could do those things. And so I owe a lot to her name is Deirdre. I owe a lot to that lady. She was just really, since retired, but she's just fantastic because she was willing to ask for what she wanted, and she could tell me what she wanted. So, which is, I think, not every business owner really even knows what they want, but she was thinking critically about her business and not just doing the things.
I think that's fantastic. I know that over the years I've come across, information, even a technology marketing toolkit has certainly given this out from the stage with Robin Robbins of saying, survey your customers, get their feedback, understand what they need. I don't really feel like most MSPs do that. That's just my gut. I know when I was in that role of director of sales and marketing, I should have done more than that. But I think a lot of times you're busy doing what you're doing. You're like, yeah, we kind of, we'll get it from our peer group or some other way. Do you continue to seek that kind of feedback from your customers, or was that just a special scenario for you with that willing muse? Or
no? So in our business and technology reviews we do with our clients, we ask them for what business problems they're trying to solve and how we can serve them better. And is there an unmet need that they've got that we just don't know about? But the challenge, I think, is just getting them to think about it, because I genuinely believe that not every business owner is thinking about those things. I think often too often we're in the trenches doing the things
Mm-hmm.
and not, getting away. Like I love getting away from the business at least once a quarter. I mean, TMT is great. Technology Marketing Toolkit is great for that. In the Producers Club offsites that we have, because it gives me a chance to get away and get some clear headspace and some distance from, the day to day. And that's super important. I'm not sure that everybody's actually in business is taking the time to step away from their business to get the clear headspace to think about the business critically, even if that's just a day on a 4-day trip. It's just dedicated time to think about what you're doing in your business. It doesn't make sense. And another defining moment for me, quite frankly, was I finally got into a peer group, and I tried a number of them over the years, where I found a core group of fellow business owners who really wanted to grow and develop, and we built that esprit de corps amongst our group. And that was back in 2014. And I'm still with some of those guys today. And frankly, my daughter gets married next week. Literally, some of those guys are coming to my daughter's wedding,
Wow.
Some of my best friends. And even members who are not in the group anymore, I still keep in touch with them. I still am part of their lives, and vice versa, because we shared more than just business. We shared our lives. We shared, our struggles, and there was truly that accountability in there. And that framework, whether with the quarterly meetings, with the education, with all the stuff that, the Technology Marketing Toolkit, the marketing team has really put together, that framework has been instrumental in kind of helping change and reset my mindset, and kind of made me rethink about what is possible, and so that has been, in the last 10 years, probably the single most significant thing in my life, has been that peer association and the quarterly meeting cadence with getting away, and just really that accountability piece has been big.
That's great. I mean, that is great. So, hey, we're kind of running down the time here. Maybe final question here is what's next? What do you see as your next big goals for IM Technology? Like, what's on your mind on that? I know you want to put together that council. Anything else in mind that you're gunning for kind of in this next year?
My number one goal this year is to build out a leadership team that will allow me to focus on us kind of elevating our game across the board. That means really leaning into the kind of mission and vision that I started the business with my dad. And at the same time, also, I want to deliver like radically awesome IT support to our clients. I don't want to be like the better fixer of the things, because at some point, I think all the robots are coming for us, and that's just going to be them doing the fixing of the things. But I mean, the actual looking where the stucks are in people's businesses, looking where the opportunities for just real advancement and acceleration and optimization. I think they go hand in hand, because if I can run a better company and our clients can run better companies, then overall, everybody becomes more successful in delivering services, being more profitable, or being able to dedicate more money to their mission. And I think that exceptionalism will be something that is really worth focusing on, not just this year, but going forward.
That sounds amazing, Stuart. Thanks for taking the time to come here and talk with me and share your experiences. I think it's really been great. Any last thought? Yeah.
Let me give you a last thought. We joined Producers Club after being flat in revenue for 5 years. We were stuck right around the $750,000 mark, thereabouts. We'd gone up a little bit, but basically it took us a really long time to get from, say, $500,000 to $750,000. And what I realized is that I was the bottleneck. I was the problem. And it was an honest conversation that I had with myself, and I'm so glad I did, because you either have to be the leader you need to be, or you need to hire the leader that you need. And getting that association in place, it helped me bust through the $1 million mark within 18 months. Basically, we were on the trajectory about 18 months got us from where we were to over $1 million, your run rate, right? So,
Yeah.
and it really was just that decision to get better. It's the old law of the lid, right? So you've got to basically be able to create the space for the people around you to grow. At the same time, you've got to look and see. And I'm not perfect in any way. I'm a work in progress, but it's just a matter of like the business leader I am today versus the business leader I was a decade ago. Like a decade ago, that guy didn't deserve his job because he didn't really earn it. He was doing it, but he didn't really earn it. And my goal and my encouragement for anybody looking to push through that $1 million is if you're stuck below $1 million, you're probably the problem. You specifically, it's not your area, it's not your clients. It's probably like you are not holding yourself accountable enough and asking yourself for the best. And then if you have lack, getting the education you need. I didn't go to business school. I went to the business school of reading books and going to listen to speakers. That was it. That's what I did. Would have been nice to go to business school. I wish I had known that was something that would have interested me, but and been valuable. But at the same time, it's, I could complain about it, or I could just get busy getting better. And that was the thing. It was the getting busy, getting better by being honest with yourself, in this case, myself, about the fact that I had gaps and I needed to get those things taken care of. And getting around a peer group, having people, whether your clients or your staff, giving them the ability to speak frankly to you, it helps eliminate those blind spots. And then you can approach with the improvement with humility and to decide that, okay, I'm going to work on this and get better at this. And I think that's the key thing. And I think you have to continue to have that, improvement, the better every day kind of attitude. Like, I'm just going to continue this process.
That's great advice. Thanks so much for your time today, Stuart.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Take care.
You too.